Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Like, I think so many coaches, we have this long 2-3 page practice plan, and the challenge is like to make sure that everything actually leads to winning and helps us to maximize our time. So how do you decide what you're going to work on in practice?
Some of it is, I think this time of year, you're just trying to get the basic fundamentals of, your foot angles on closeouts. And we're a very simple terminology type of team. We don't, just making sure we're calling ball every single time the ball moves, making sure we're, on the midline and who has the rim. And so there's a lot of different ways. I think that's something that coaches can kind of challenge themselves with, is like, you want to do these core things in defensively or offensively, whatever it is, but how many different ways, how many different drills, how many different so there's a newness and not a staleness, but you want to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're holding the guys accountable to the 4 or 5 same things that you really, really want them to be held accountable to, but just in different ways. And then you got to kind of evaluate when you're watching film, like, hey, man, we're not doing this very well. Maybe we're not level on a ball screen coverage. Like, let's really show a couple clips of this before practice. Let's, break that down in a shell segment or even 2 ends. And then, let's really make sure when we're playing that one of the assistants is watching that and we're trying to improve in that area. Because you can feel like, because this time of year, you're watching your teams practice and you're like, man, we have to get better at everything, but you can't get better at everything every
That's
day.
Right.
So I think just kind of weighing specifically, hey man, let's offensively, let's make sure our guys are running all the way to the corners, like little bitty things, and make it an emphasis for that day, while you're always going to have your core values. And you're always going to talk about, hey man, we're going to grab every rebound with 2 hands. That's every day. We're going to, sprint back and call ball and be in gaps every day, but that may not be the emphasis that day, but that's going to be understood. And just how you differentiate from it, how you do it, what do you want to do, kind of depends on what you're seeing.
How do you hold them accountable throughout a practice to those things? I mean, besides just constantly yelling out those reminders, like, I think because coaches will sometimes write down or say, hey, guys, this is the emphasis for the day. But then the practice goes by and there really wasn't much accountability to that thing. Well, let's just take running to the corners. If you don't see that happening, how do you get them, motivate them anyway to do that?
Yeah, I think there's, like, this time of the year, because so many of the habits are not formed, and guys, you are introducing some new concepts, and so they are legitimately learning what you want them to do. So now I think it's just more about, hey, stopping it, correcting it, showing it on film. And then when you do get to the point, as a team or as a program, say you're doing a defensive shell drill, and hey man, we're calling ball every time. We want high hands on the closeout. We're going to be in a stance. We're going to make sure we're getting to the rim. Some guys, when you start doing it, they don't know what they're doing. And then when it gets to the point where they do kind of know what they're doing, but maybe the concentration or the effort level isn't great enough, then I think that's when you start looking at maybe having some sort of accountability structure.
Yeah.
We've done little things before. I mean, any standard stuff. Maybe you're doing perfect possession defensively or 2 stops in a row to get off defense. And if you don't call ball, then it doesn't count. Or we'll have a student assistant stand next to us and you're going to just, hey, like Matt, no stance. And he's just over there tallying. And when that segment's over, how many ever tallies you have, you're going to run, but you can get a plus for getting a deflection or taking a charge. And so you can negate it that way. But I do think you got to be careful, because the easy answer would be, well, as soon as they don't do something you ask them to do, stop it and run for it or punish them. But if they don't know what they're doing,
yeah,
then you're really not even, it's hard to hold somebody accountable for something they don't know.
Yeah.
But once they know it, and then, like I said, then it's just like, hey, maybe they're not putting the concentration in that day. They're not putting in the effort. They're not putting in the intensity. Then I think you can start looking at some like penalties, I guess you'd say, for not doing what you're supposed to do, just to help remind you.
I like that. The penalties, not punishments, right? We never say that word. I think you're right on the money, and maybe that's a part of becoming like a master teacher. And I think that's what coaches, that's what we aspire to be, our master teachers. Is if they're continuously making these mistakes, then obviously we haven't taught it well enough yet. Once we feel like we have taught it yet, and then I think that accountability can really come in. And you nailed it with, I love the idea of tallying it, or that possession doesn't count if you don't get it. So instead of thinking consequences, I think we can build into whatever drill we're working on, whatever standard, violations. Like instead of just traveling, fouls, things like that are normal basketball violations, to get into the corners to us is huge. And we call that getting dangerous. And if guys can't rim run because there's a defender in between them, we don't want to just cut to cut. We're not, what is his name? Jackie Moon from Semi-Pro. It's just going to go rover and run around. Because of that, we want to get dangerous, which means as we get to those deep corners. And the moment they don't, violation, failure to be dangerous. And it's just a change of possession. I've noticed by using those the violations as one, like that cuts to them more. Losing possession, not getting a credit for a bucket, because another one is pointing to the passer. We always want to do that. Well, you shoot it, you trot back, and before half court, you don't point. That's no bucket. That doesn't stop the game. We don't put them on the line and run. We're not going to make it like this extrinsic, I'm afraid to make a mistake because there'll be pain involved. Yeah. Man, just make it a violation.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
So yeah, I like that. I like the failure to point. That's a good one. Reinforcing it through film, showing what it looks like, pulling up old game film, how it works, how it's going to show up, why it's important, obviously you're dealing with, a wide variety of age groups, and even at this level, why is important, like anybody with kids, you're going to know, like, have a sophomore daughter and a middle school son. So like, why has been in their vocabulary for a long time, but it is important to understand, like, hey, this is why we want you to run the corners. When you run to the corners, that's going to open up driving lanes. That's going to open up a rim run. Hey, this is why we want to call ball. So we don't have 2 people. We're already scrambling around. We don't want 2 people running to the ball. You're not calling ball so you know it. You're calling ball so everyone knows that I have the ball, and we can fan out accordingly. So the why is important.
I think you nailed it there with players today wanting to know the why. And there's this big discussion of, are players different today than they were, like, even back, because you and I are about the same age. I think we played around the same time. Yeah. And I think maybe the coaches that we had, or just how we were raised, or how it was, there really wasn't a lot of asking why. No. Just tell me what to do, I'll do it. And if I don't, I know I'm either not going to play or I'm going to run. There's going to be pain involved. And I think that's the biggest change. And maybe it's because of the phones, the fact that they can find the why to anything pretty much in 15 seconds. Oh. That for them, all of a sudden, with us to not be allowed to ask why, that's foreign. And so I think that would be a big change in kids today to when we played.
Well, the truth is, and we know this now as we, like you said, the information age, the ability to understand what's going on outside of your program,
Yeah.
whereas you were saying at the end, like, shoot, man, in the even in the 2000s, if you were at Washington State, you didn't know what the University of Florida was doing,
Yeah.
so like, even from a coaching standpoint, just like that,
I mean, there's a
even
hype
the
video
typical
every week
way of
now.
like, hey, this is the only way, like, this is the how you win. Well, the truth is you can win games a lot of different ways. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Now all coaches may not want to admit it because we all would like to think our way is the best way, but the reality is there's lots of ways you can win games with playing a 2-3 zone. You can win games pressing. You can win games playing super fast. You can win games playing super slow. That is the truth. So to not be authentic with your players and act like there's only one way and this is the only way to do it, well then then they start knowing that you're not being truthful. You're not being authentic.
And now they have a portal that they can jump right into when they feel like that's happening. So authenticity, like you said, clarity has to
Clarity.
be more important for you than ever before, I would imagine.
Yep. No, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
You had a great point earlier too about the drills that you choose and how you're right on the money. Here's the objective. There's probably 5, 6, 7 different drills or ways that we can meet that. And I think that's part of the fun of practice
Yep.
planning for me is, man, I don't want to be teaching or having them go through the same thing. I want to put them in different scenarios, but that will still reach our objective. So for us, like, we don't screen that much. We're 5 out, pace and space. We try to keep bodies really separate from each other to create double and triple gaps. So for me to go and see a really cool screening drill on Twitter that got a lot of likes and great players are doing it, and it looks really cool, to put that in my practice doesn't make sense. It doesn't help the way that we play. It's not what we're doing. I think that's the danger, is when
Yeah.
coaches do follow tons of great people on Twitter or on Instagram, skill work, just because it looks cool doesn't mean it's actually going to help your players in the style or system that you play. So going back to master teaching, maybe that's a part of it, of the art of it, is being creative, but finding those things that actually match with what you're doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. And you want to be able to um you do want to be able to keep it fresh, for your players, and you don't want it to be stale. You don't want it to be like, where it's just like, call it like a sheep mentality where you're just kind
Yeah.
of showing up because Coach Hodge said, you get the text message, oh, we're practicing at 10, you show up, you're aimlessly, on autopilot. I do think it's good, and that's what I'm saying. You can mix in different drills that day, but it's all kind of part of the same overarching principle of what you want to get done. Maybe you do it in different orders. We've done that before too. Maybe you come into a practice and you just start off with a game, just like, instead of even, how the flow usually goes. You stretch, you do some individual work, you do some breakdown stuff, you do some transition stuff, then you play. So maybe it is just like, hey man, let's just hop in right away, and let's just say, hey, you're down 3 and there's 10 seconds on the clock and we're running, winner, and just hop right into it and just stimulate the brain in a different way. Has been helpful at times too, just so just when they think they've got it completely pegged on what we're going to do that day, you switch
You
it up.
flip it.
You start
Yeah.
with your presses,
Yep.
start pressing against each other and just get to competing a little bit more, because obviously players, that's what they like to do. Let's be
Yeah.
honest, they like
No
to
doubt.
play. They like to play.
Coach Drew was great about creating a fun environment. He was the first coach I ever had that did that, where there's music playing. With Coach Bliss, there's never music playing, and it was more of a like a Remember the Titans, zero fun, sir. Like, that was kind of the feeling of practice. And then I think overseas, I think they've kind of over the years been experimenting in different ways with different ideas. And like one of our warm-ups was in Iceland was I came out and there was a soccer ball on the floor indoor, that, whatever the yellow one is. And we warmed up by playing soccer, which I felt like an idiot because I sucked at it, but it was like, we've never done this. And it was just such an interesting approach. And I think we're kind of catching up maybe even over here to doing that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.